Home Assistant 2026.8 is here, and this month one of its most recognisable quirks is finally beginning to disappear. And there's also some important changes to how Home Assistant handles your devices behind the scenes. So come with me as I take you through what's changed and everything you need to know before you go ahead and upgrade. Hey everyone, my name's Simon and welcome to Bite of Geek, a channel that's all about Home Assistant and smart home technology. So here we are then with the 2026.8 version of Home Assistant just about to be released, and this month the focus is on making Home Assistant easier and more approachable without taking away the flexibility existing users have come to expect. As with every release, we've also got a great selection of new integrations, plenty of smaller improvements, and some breaking changes to be aware of. Now, I mention this in every update video, but it's worth noting again that this is a beta release of Home Assistant, and as such, it can be subject to change before the final release, with features potentially dropped or added at the last minute. I'll put a link to the release notes in the description of this video if you want to read about the update in more detail, but let's kick things off and look at what's in store for the August release of Home Assistant. So starting off with the new features then, and I think it's fair to say that the main theme running through this release is making Home Assistant more approachable regardless of someone's technical ability, and there are several changes this month that all contribute towards that goal. The first of these sees Home Assistant starting to move away from something that has been there for as long as most of us can probably remember. It's also the thing that many people get caught out with, and that's the need to add port 8123 to the end of its local address. From this release, any new installations of Home Assistant will use a normal web address without the port number at the end, making it just that little bit easier for someone to remember how to access their Home Assistant instance. And it's important to point out here that this only applies to new installations. If you already have Home Assistant set up and you're using port 8123, then nothing will change when you upgrade. And in fact, you don't actually need to do anything. However, if you do want to change the port, then now you can do that directly through the UI, along with choosing which network connection Home Assistant listens on and configuring trusted proxies if you need to do that. Obviously, making changes to something as fundamental as the address you use to access Home Assistant could potentially result in you locking yourself out, but there's some protection built into this. So once you change the setting, then Home Assistant will wait for you to confirm that everything is still working, and if you don't confirm it within 5 minutes, then it'll restore the previous settings and then restart. It goes without saying that you'll need to update anything else that uses the old address, including things like bookmarks, the companion app, or any other services that connect directly to Home Assistant. So if everything is already working, then there's probably no real reason to change it. And if you currently configure the web server through YAML, those settings will be imported into the UI following the update. You may see a repair suggesting that you remove the old YAML, but everything should continue working in the meantime. Keeping with this overall theme then of making Home Assistant more approachable, and the team have also looked at some of the language used throughout the system. Words such as advanced and expert have been removed from around 43 places across Home Assistant, the documentation and the companion apps. The features haven't changed, but the wording will now describe what they do rather than suggesting that they're intended for a particular type of user. The most noticeable example of this is developer tools, which has now been renamed to simply tools, given that it's used for everything from checking entity states and testing templates to reloading parts of your setup. You've never actually needed to be a developer to use this, so the new name probably makes more sense. Home Assistant Cloud has also received a complete redesign. Rather than presenting everything on one long page, there's now a cleaner overview with remote access, backups, voice assistants, and the companion app, each given their own section and settings page. For anyone setting up Home Assistant Cloud for the first time, there's also a new guided setup that will walk you through the available features one step at a time. And if you don't want to complete them all there and then you can leave it as is and return to it later. Next, and we have more control over how entity IDs are named, and there had previously been some work around automatically building entity IDs from the area that a device belongs to. However, feedback on that was understandably mixed. Not everyone wants to organize or name their entities in the same way. So rather than Home Assistant deciding this for you, now you can rename an entity ID yourself and control the order of its different parts, allowing you to follow whichever naming structure makes the most sense for your own particular setup. There's also quite a significant change happening behind the scenes with how Home Assistant handles devices that are connected through more than one integration. Up until now, if the same physical device was discovered by two different integrations, Home Assistant would merge them into one device. The problem with that is that information can only have one value, such as the model or serial number, and could potentially conflict between the two integrations. From this release, each integration will keep its own separate device entry instead. And when you upgrade, Home Assistant will automatically separate any devices that had previously been merged and move their entities to the correct device. Most people probably won't notice any difference here, but if you have the same device connected through multiple integrations, you may see it appear more than once and potentially receive a repair notification explaining what has gone and happened. It's also noted that your existing automations and scripts should continue to work, but as with anything like this, it may be worth checking any unusual automations that reference a device directly by its device ID. This is really some groundwork for more flexible device handling in future releases rather than the actual finished feature. So it will be interesting to see where the team takes this over the coming months. And finally, for new features, following the introduction of purpose-specific triggers and conditions in the last release from the labs to the live production, we now have a couple more of them in this release. Vibration now has its own conditions to go alongside the existing triggers, so as well as reacting when vibration starts or stops, an automation can check whether something is currently vibrating as part of its conditions. So as an example, you could use this with a vibration sensor on a washing machine to only send a notification once it's actually stopped moving. And the moon has also gained its own trigger and matching conditions, allowing you to start an automation when its phase changes or check its current phase as part of a wider automation. So overall then, this release isn't built around one massive new feature, but it does continue the work of making Home Assistant easier to understand and use. At the same time, we've got more control over how our entities are named, some important groundwork for how devices will be handled in the future, and a few useful additions to the way automations now get built. Next, and we have the integrations, and these are the building blocks of Home Assistant that enable so many devices to interact in our smart homes. Each release there's something new or something that's changed, which makes it really important to keep up to date with the latest updates each month. So make sure to hit like and subscribe so that you don't miss my next video. Starting things off then, and if you live in Denmark, well, there's a new fuelprices.dk integration that lets you track current fuel prices from Danish fuel companies. You can select a fuel station and the products you're interested in, with each one then appearing as a sensor that you can display on your dashboards or use in automations. If you're running Gatus to monitor the health of your services on your network, then now you can bring that information into Home Assistant. Each monitored endpoint appears as a binary sensor, allowing you to see its current status on a dashboard or trigger automations whenever a service goes down or comes back online. There's a new Google Health integration that lets you bring health and fitness information from Google Health and the Fitbit web API into Home Assistant. After you've connected your Google account, you can then access sensors for things such as your steps, distance, weight and resting heart rate, and it can be used alongside the existing Fitbit integration. I can see some really nice dashboards being built with that information. Let me know in the comments down below if that's something that you'll be using. If you use a Harbour Sleep Baby monitor, then now you can keep an eye on it from Home Assistant. The integration communicates with the monitor over your local network and gives you access to information such as the temperature, Wi-Fi strength and stream quality. Owners of network streamers based on the Harman luxury audio platform can now control them from Home Assistant. So this includes models such as the Arcam Radio, ST5 and ST60, along with equivalent streamers from JBL and Mark Levinson. And because the integration communicates directly with the device over your local network, then there's no cloud account required. For those of you running the self-hosted Kara Keep bookmarking service, well, there's a new integration that lets you bring your bookmark statistics into Home Assistant as sensors. Kara Keep can be used to save and organize links, notes and images, and you can now keep track of that information from your Home Assistant dashboards. We have another infrared integration this month, this time for controlling LED lights. The new LED infrared integration works with any infrared transmitter you already have set up in Home Assistant and supports many branded and unbranded bulbs and LED strip controllers that use generic infrared remotes. Worth noting that communication is only one way, so Home Assistant has to use assumed state rather than receiving the actual state back from the lights. We've a couple of new options this month for those wanting to use different AI models with Home Assistant. So the first is Light LLM, which lets you use a Light LLM proxy as a conversation agent. Light LLM provides a single OpenAI compatible API for accessing models from a huge range of different providers, whether they're hosted elsewhere or running locally, and Home Assistant can create a separate conversation agent for each model that you configure. The second option that we've got is Llama CPP, which lets you use a local Llama CPP server or another OpenAI compatible endpoint as a conversation agent in Home Assistant. You can configure multiple agents with different models and instructions, and if you're running Llama CPP on your own hardware, you can keep the entire conversation process completely local. If you have a Lingdorf audio processor or amplifier, then now you can control features such as its power, volume, source and sound modes all from Home Assistant. The integration communicates with the device over your local network and keeps its state in sync with Home Assistant. There's also a new Media LAN integration for devices that use the Media protocol. So that's things like air conditioners and air purifiers. And that brings information from compatible devices into Home Assistant and lets you control their main features. So it's perfect timing for all this hot weather everyone is enjoying. If you have a swimming pool with a controller based on the NeoPool system, then now you can monitor and manage it from Home Assistant. The system was originally developed by Sugar Valley, but it also sold under several other brands, including Hydrolife, Aquarite and OxyLife. It communicates locally with the controller using Modbus TCP and gives you access to water chemistry, filtration and hydrolysis information with no cloud connection required. And finally, for new integrations, if a vehicle has been shared with you through a public Scorpion track location link, you can now display its location on your Home Assistant map. The integration creates a device tracker for each shared vehicle and doesn't require access to the owner's private Scorpion Track account. So that's the new integrations in this release, but as always, we also have plenty of improvements to existing ones. I'm not going to go through every change, but I'll pick out some of the more notable ones, starting with Reolink, which has gained pre-siren entities and a motion device class for its AI detection binary sensors. Following the updates in last month's release, SwitchBot Cloud can now trigger the AI art frame by webhook. If you have a Roborock Q10, well, the integration's now been updated to have a do not disturb switch, some switch entities, a map image and a volume control. So some nice things there to update your dashboards with. If you've been using the new infrared platform in Home Assistant since its release, then you might be interested to know that you can now send infrared commands via MQTT. I think that's going to open up some really cool use cases for those of you who are able to take advantage of that. Those using the recently added Mel Cloud home integration will now find that energy consumption reporting and a number platform have now been added. If you're using MikroTik devices, then the integration has now had sensor, button and update platforms added to it. WIM audio users will, I'm sure, be pleased to hear that multi-room grouping and metadata synchronization has been added to the integration. Those with SM Lite Ultima devices should note that the integration now has added Bluetooth proxy support and an infrared receiver. And if you have Victron devices, well, now the Victron BLE has added support for Orion XS and inverters. And finally, LG Infrared will now support LG air conditioners, perfect for building automations to cool your home in all this hot weather we're having. That's just some of the many integrations that have had updates this month, but if you want to read up on the full list of improvements, then don't forget to check out the link in the description of this video down below. We've also got several integrations moving up the quality scale. So we've got Anthropic and SM Lite SLZB have now reached platinum, while Nobo EcoHub moves to gold. Dropbox, Kioska, OpenWRT, Stybel Eltron and Watt Watcher Plus all move to silver, with Midea CCM15 AC controller and Netatmo moving to bronze. It's great to see the maintainers getting recognised in these releases, as a huge amount of work goes into making these integrations available for everyone. And if you appreciate the effort that they put in, then hit the like button below. There's some great improvements across the board with the notable changes this month, and we start with a new optional survey for those who have recently installed or rebuilt Home Assistant, which will ask you how your initial setup went, with the feedback being used to improve the onboarding experience for new users. Next, and the template editor has been given a much roomier layout, with the editor and its results now displayed in a split view that you can resize. You can also choose whether to have them side by side or stacked on top of one another, and Home Assistant will remember your chosen layout for the next time that you use it. If you use the picture elements card for things such as interactive floor plans, then they should now be much easier to use on a touch screen. Previously, tapping in the space between overlapping elements could result in nothing really happening, but Home Assistant will now direct the tap to the nearest icon or label instead. There's a useful improvement to how multiple batteries are displayed in the energy dashboard, as now you can enter the capacity of each one. The combined state of charge will then be weighted based on their individual sizes, rather than a small full battery and a much larger empty one producing a potentially misleading average. If you don't enter the capacities, then everything will continue to work as it did before. And it should be much easier to find songs, photographs and films in the media browser, as integrations can now add their own search functionality. Exactly what you can search for will depend on the integration, but if you take image, for example, you can now use Smart Search to find photos based on what's actually in them rather than just their file names. And the Overseer integration also takes advantage of this new feature, allowing you to search for and request films and TV shows without having to leave Home Assistant. This next one I really like, and that is if you find yourself using the same cards over and over when you're building dashboards, then now you can add them to your favorites. You find this in the By Card tab of the card picker, and any cards that you mark as a favorite will appear at the top, making them much easier to find the next time that you need them. Templates continue to receive performance improvements, which is very welcome, with those that return numeric results now apparently up to 40% faster. Templates used on dashboards can also now be cached, which should help improve their performance even further. If you're using template fans, covers, or device trackers, then now they will restore their previous state following a restart, rather than just starting again without knowing what state they were in before. Search has also been improved, and now it will dig deeper into the relationships between your devices and entities. So this means that it should do a better job of showing connected scenes, scripts, groups, labels, and areas, as well as the people associated with a person entity, making it easy to understand how everything in your Home Assistant setup fits together. A nice addition for those running Home Assistant OS, and that is that the system update entity will now let you know when an update requires a reboot before it can be completed. And there's a new device class for radon, so sensors and number entities that measure it can now be correctly identified and shown with the appropriate units. If you've got a Matter doorbell, then now it should be correctly recognized in Home Assistant and provide a doorbell event entity, which you can then use to trigger automations whenever someone presses it. This is great to see, and I'll be checking out the Aqara doorbell that I reviewed recently to see how much that integration has improved. With this release, Home Assistant now also supports Z-Wave locks that require users and their credentials to be paired together. And the entity filter has been expanded again, so now you can narrow down entities based on their manufacturer, model, or model ID, which should be particularly useful if you've lots of similar devices in your setup. You can now start an assist command directly from Quick Search, giving you another fast way of asking Assist to carry out an action. And a subtle but welcome improvement to the clock card, as you can now choose to display the date alongside the time. And finally, the activity panel has gained a couple of new options. You can now download its information as a CSV file, as well as clear and reset the recorded activity directly from the panel. But I'm interested to know, is anyone else finding that they're using the activity panel more since the recent updates were introduced, or is it just me? There are a number of items under the breaking changes for this release, so we'll jump straight in with Gardena Bluetooth, and there's a change to the activation reason sensor, which was previously a free-form text value, and now it reports a fixed set of values. So if you have any scripts and automations using that, then it's worth updating those to the new values. Next, and we have a change to OMI, and that is that the energy sensor has been removed from the integration. Apparently it was previously reporting an estimated value of the energy stored in the battery rather than what was actually delivered, which apparently was causing confusion. There isn't anything in the official API to replace this, so if you need this, then you'll need to use a Riemann sum helper on a power sensor to do the estimating instead. Those of you using paperless NGX will need to update your paperless NGX server to the new minimum supported version of 2.19. And importantly, you'll need to do that before you update Home Assistant. Owners of robot vacuums in Home Assistant will, I'm sure, be pleased to know that the battery level property has now been removed from quite a few integrations. So if you've been using that maybe on a dashboard or in an automation, then it's now no longer available. This is going to affect LG ThinQ, Neato, Romi, Shark IQ, SwitchBot Cloud, Template, TP-Link and Xiaomi Mio. If you're using the Screen Logic integration, then the ability to configure the polling interval has been removed, with Home Assistant now polling it on a fixed interval. If you need to have that on a different frequency, then you can set up your own interval, or you can trigger an update as well. Unify Protect AI port devices have been removed from the Unify Protect integration. Apparently only diagnostic sensors were ever exposed, all of which were disabled by default, and they weren't part of the public API that the integration is moving to, so they've all had to go. Worth noting that the sensors will be removed automatically when you upgrade, so it might be worth just checking where you're using those if you do. And finally, Volvo On Call has been removed, and so if you were using that, then you should look to use the newer Volvo integration instead. So there you have it. That's what we've got to look forward to in Home Assistant 2026.8. There's some really nice functionality in this release, and given that we're in the summer holidays, I'm surprised we've got quite so much. Is there something that's caught your attention in this release? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss more Home Assistant updates like this, as well as all the other smart home content that I create on the channel. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.